What's up, Dragon Brood? We are back with more Core Set 2021 standard deck list. That feels like a mouthful. Maybe I should say C21 deck updates or something. But anyway, decks using Core Set 2021 cards, which I'm sure everybody's excited about. And today we're talking about GRUUL decks because y'all knew I was going to do that sooner or later. I kind of like slow rolled you and didn't make it the first one I did, but I couldn't avoid it, obviously. I've been thinking about it off and on. Obviously, a bunch of you GRUUL players come to the channel and everybody kind of wants to know, like, what's PowrDragn gonna do? So I'm gonna tell you. But first, I need you to like this video because, you know, we all like GRUUL decks, and subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, so that way you know when I'm putting up all the rest of these deck lists I'm gonna be putting up over the next couple of days. Now, that being said, let's take a look at the deck. And before we get too far in, don't forget we're still doing the giveaway. It's going to be open at this point for another couple of days. Giving 6 packages of things away. I'll do 3 names. They get to pick from those packages, and I ship it out to you totally free. All you have to do is watch the video, which I can put up in the opposite corner, and that's it. Watch the video, fill out something that takes like a minute, and you're good to go. Anyway, the deck. So the bulk of this obviously isn't going to change much because this deck was pretty solid, but we did find some new cards that do make their way in here. So kind of ignore this last column for a second. We'll talk about that here in a little bit because that's going to be sideboard stuff. But we are looking at the 4 Pelt Collectors, which is still our 1-drop card of choice. We did go with 3 Heroic Interventions. I was debating 2 or 4, so I eventually settled on 3. And the reason being is this card's just very flexible. Like, it functions sometimes as removal because you can just swing your creatures into your opponent and then nothing of yours dies. You know, that's a big thing. Obviously, you can use it against things like Shatter the Sky, Storm's Wrath, any of that stuff that's trying to wipe out your creatures. But giving all of your things hexproof and indestructible is huge. I mean, sometimes it's just they go to pick off your biggest creature, you protect it, then you start fighting the next turn. So one of the best additions I think the GRUUL list could get. And remember, you can use this to protect something that's on the ground from like a Brazen Borrower or something from even a Aether Gust. I mean, this is a good answer to that as well. And you also get them to lose their Brazen Borrower when they use the Petty Theft because it's now an illegal target because it has hexproof. We're down to 3 Robber of the Rich, but I don't mind that so much because it still leaves us with a whole bunch of 1- and 2-drop things. We're playing 4 of the Zertog Goblins. We're down to just 3 Bonecrusher Giants, and if there's any flaw in this particular list I've built for this first version, is that it doesn't have a lot of removal. So realistically, I probably need to go back and find a way to include either Domri, Anarchabolus, or maybe even just find a spot for that 4th Bonecrusher Giant or a couple of Scorching Dragonfires like we had before. Playing a full set of GRUUL Spellbreakers, 3 up here, 1 down here. We're testing 1 Rada, Heart of Keld, and the reason is there's some neat synergy with other cards where you get like a Rada and a Vivian out. That can be pretty useful together. Sometimes Rada herself can just be a finisher just because she's bigger for the number of lands in play. She also can smooth out your draw, so you're not drawing those lands later in the game when you don't want them. You can just play the land off the top, hope to draw into creatures. So we're going to see how good Rada is in practice. I don't really know yet. Playing 1 Garruk Unleashed. Maybe, maybe not. We don't want this card. I don't know yet. But it does have a way to usually produce at least 2 beast tokens. It can give something trample and really force your opponent to block. There's some cases too where maybe your opponent has a 1/1 or a 2/2, and maybe you just have something like Zertog Goblin, and you need to get through and kill a Planeswalker. Well, turn that Zertog Goblin into a 5/5 or a 6/6 might be all you need. So this will be an interesting card to see where it fits as the kind of format shapes up. Still playing 3 Gemrazor. I expect there's still going to be some amount of Temur Reclamation. There's going to be people trying some of the new enchantments and artifacts, building quirky decks, so you still want to be able to take some of that stuff out. And, you know, it does pump your other creatures in a way, which we still like. Playing 3 Questing Beast. It's arguable that we could go to a fourth one. You know, I've been debating that for a while, but for now I'm just going to leave it there. Now, this is the next kind of like new different superstar card we're playing here. And this is the Terror of the Peaks. And I really debated on if I wanted Terror of the Peaks or if I wanted Elder Gargaroth. I think we're going to start out trying Terror of the Peaks, and then we'll see how it goes. If opponents are playing just a bunch of the -4/-4 thing, the new black spell, if they're playing a bunch of Storm's Wrath or whatever, then the Terror is going to be a lot less useful. So then you'll want something like the Elder Gargaroth. Dang, I gotta get used to saying that. Instead, because it's got such a big toughness and can survive that. But until we find out what everybody's playing, we're just going to ride with the Terror. The other interesting thing too is it does still deal 3 damage even if they decide to target directly, so we can't really turn our nose up at that, and it flies. We're playing 2 Vivien Monsters Advocate. There's a couple of reasons for this. Part of it is I want to see how Vivien interacts with Radha, like I mentioned earlier. The other is I'm kind of looking at some of these games are going to be going a bit long. I feel like we're going to be in a world where the mid-rangey and control decks are going to have a lot of removal. They're going to have a lot of staying power. So you want your own options to be able to like produce some creatures, which between this and Garruk, you can make sometimes 2 creatures a turn. You also have the option that when you draw something, Vivien can let you go find a second creature. And you know, we've seen that on some previous videos if you watch on the channel, where you minus Vivien, you play a Questing Beast, go get a Spellbreaker, something like that, and really do some big damage. We're still playing 3 Embercleaves. Ultimately, though, I can see where this list might just go down to 2 Embercleaves, but don't really know yet. Lands, I didn't really touch these from the last version that we built. So we're playing 1 Castle Embereth, 4 Stomping Ground, 3 Temple of Abandon. You're looking at 10 Forest, and the rest are mountains. So nothing real fancy there. Now, one of the things I want to touch on here is the sideboard, some things that we're doing. So we're still playing a couple of red cap melees. I think you're going to see, like you do after every format switches, there's going to be some red decks. I mean, I just put one up yesterday that I think is pretty solid if you want to check that out, if you're interested in mono red decks. But you're still going to need a way to get rid of some of those like Torbrands and things, or maybe even opposing creatures in Gruul decks. Cindervines I really like. This has been probably my favorite card against the control matchups, and I feel like we're going to be in a world where there could be several control or mid-rangey decks, several of them relying on enchantments especially, and this is going to be the card you're going to want to get out of that. Playing just 2 Scavenging Oozes. I wanted to play more, but I couldn't really figure out where I'd squeeze the room. This does cut down on any of the cycling decks, any of the stuff that like Sultai that's playing full of Kranos and Uro and all that stuff. It does remove things from the yard if your opponent plays something like Elspeth Conquers Death, right? So it's pretty flexible. It's arguable I could have played it in the main deck, but the only spot I really would have put it is probably over Robber of the Rich. And right now I think our advantage is still having that hasty momentum against some of the opponents. But if it turns out the early part of the format ends up being super creature heavy, I would swap and put more, maybe even up to 4 Scavenging Oozes main deck, move the Robber of the Rich to the sideboard if you really want them. Otherwise, just moving them out and just finding an entirely new card to play. And the reason there is just if it ends up being more creature heavy, the Scavenging Ooze ultimately can become a 4/4 or a 5/5, and you'll be gaining some incremental life along the way, and that makes a big difference when you're having those back-to-back creature battles. So I'm playing 3 Flame Sweep with the idea that you're gonna still have the graveyard deck still being a thing. You're going to have still the cat oven situations with the Joan Sacrifice, or even some just token decks. This is still going to be good against that. Does it warrant 4 slots or 3 slots? I don't know, but we'll see. Still playing 3 Shifting Ceratops. Now these used to be main deck and I moved them to the side. Part of this is we're already seeing some of the Orzhov decks starting to come around that Ceratops isn't that good against. You know, if you're playing against other red decks or other Gruul decks, Ceratops isn't spectacular. So now in the sideboard, and now it's kind of in its true home in the sideboard where it probably deserves to be. And then here we're playing a couple Elder Gargaroth. I do like this as one of the slower cards you can actually play against the red decks, play against other Gruul decks. It really gums up the ground. Like we're saying, in some matchups, even if all they have are just the 4 damage sweepers, you know, that type of thing, it's going to survive that too. So it's got uses in a lot of spots. So I'm at least putting it there for now until I figure out what I want to do with it going forward. But that's kind of our starting point for GRUUL here. And yeah, like I was saying, the sideboard's definitely very flexible here, and it's very, very possible that by the end of week 2, I could have Scavenging Ooze as main deck. You know, who knows? Can't really speak to that yet without seeing more of the format and how it shakes out. But it is very possible and reasonable. But, you know, there's going to be a lot of versions that people are going to build. And I don't think in any way, shape, or form that this is even close to final. I think we're at a point now when you have an 8-set standard that a lot of what decks look like are truly going to come down to the metagame and personal preference. You know, how you're choosing to deal with each of those things. Like this version, as an example, has no Klothys currently. But if it turns out there's a bunch of graveyard stuff or we're playing a bunch of really long games, then I definitely would want Klothys back in there. So there's going to be some, I don't know, experimentation and whatnot, some theory crafting, as I like to call it, here in the first couple of weeks. But I do think this is at least a good starting point. Anyway, if you haven't, remember, like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, get notified when I'm putting all these new deck lists up to save yourself some time when you need deck building starting points. Also, don't forget, we still have that giveaway video. Going to be giving a bunch of stuff away. It's only going to be up for a couple more days. Check that out right here on the channel. It's free. All it takes is, like, even if you watch the video all the way through, like 7 minutes of your time, it is totally worth it. I mean, if you watch to this point in the video, you've already watched longer than that would actually cost you in time. But anyway, that's all I have for today. We'll see you next.